beautiful souls out there. I hope you're able to get out in nature like Starlight was. I was outside, but here I am. So anyway, I love you so much. And I hope you're being good to your loved ones, love them like you would love yourself. And that's not always easy, right? Is to, reach out to your loved ones, check out, see how they're doing, not just during the holidays or birthdays, right? 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 Okay. So I hope not, So anyway, I do love you. And if you are just only reaching out, during the holidays and birthdays, that means you got work to do. And they do too. So anyway, I love you so much. And a big, huge thank you to all of you who have been here, loving and supporting Starlight, who watches my videos, gives me thumbs up, shares my videos, leaves me a comment, or even pushes the notification bell. So thank you to all of you, and also anyone that would love to send any love donations to Starlight, you can on my Cash App through my YouTube video here, and I will have that information here. Ping! There it is. And also, like I said, make sure, be gentle with those, and be honest with those people out there, It's not always easy. And, your family or loved ones that you have or friends, to be gentle, be honest, be real, take off the mask. It's okay that you can take off the mask. Let them get a little scared to find out who you really are. So anyway, I love you so much. And today's video is about, there's times, how do you know when we should give up on things or people? How do we know? A guy recently asked me this. I had a great conversation with this person, and that was a question, because of the conversation that we had. And that was a great question, because throughout our whole life, we're always told, don't give up, keep going, and that's a great question, because there's many times in our life, it could be a job or the people that we're surrounding ourselves with that we're like, well, they say keep on, like a job, especially a job, keep on going, it's going to get better. And I met a lady a while back somewhere, I don't know what state I was in, but she's like, it's going to get better, but is it? She was struggling at work, lying to her. That's what we do sometimes. We lie to ourselves. We're not really listening to our intuition. We're not listening to our gut. There's times our gut is telling us stuff, but we're listening to what everybody else says. Well, you've been with them, you've been with that company how long? You've been there. And a lot of times people get too comfortable, even at the, where they live. And this is also even where, where you have a job, where you work. And it can also be where you live, when, there's a lot of people that are stuck. They feel stuck. They believe that they're stuck. They're not happy where they live. They're not happy with the job that they have, or they might not be happy in a relationship, but they keep on working. They're like, I got to keep on working because we got these kids. I got a great relationship with her family or his family, right? Boy, we all get along great. But then we don't. So, how do you know when to give up? How do you know when to give up on something or someone? When you realize, what? You're doing all the work and you're not happy. And there's more on that. So I'm going to just talk to you about this on different things, like the place. We're going to start with your place, your house, where you live. Are you happy where you live? You're like, no, I've been here. They keep on raising the money, the rent. you know. I don't like the location, but you know, we're living here because this happens to many people, is because that's where the job is. Are you even happy at where you work? See, people get stuck thinking that I got it, you know, well, I make good money, Starlight. You don't realize, you know, I do know somebody right now is that they've been working on trying to get a job, and you know what? People have been telling this person, you know, good sound advice, and they hear it. They're not really believing in themselves. They really don't understand how it works. You know, they're not really seeing the big picture, you know, of what they could, you know, really create for themselves. They're not really believing, you know, other people have more faith in them saying you can do this, but they don't have the faith in themselves believing that they can actually do it. And so a lot of times what people do is that they kind of take the easy way, you know, like as far as money goes, you know, having a business or working for a company or whatever is, you know, have you been noticing, like, you know, like a pattern where everywhere you work, there's some kind of problem? You know, this job, what was the problem there? This is, you know, a lot of toxic energies, you know, a lot of negative energy. I wasn't happy because, you know, a lot of backstabbing and gossiping and, you know, and the boss was in on all this stuff. They all were talking bad and backstabbing each other, you know. And these things, even, you know, we can even say, even a church, you know, going to church. It's not up to me whether you go to church or not, or that job that you work, or that relationship. It's up to you to really, I'm here just to kind of show you, like, ways that you can find out, really, is it worth it all? Is it worth it all to keep on, like, is it worth the squeeze? You know, they have tarot card readers that have that, is it worth the squeeze? So, so with like a job, people might come up to you and say, wow, you're a great worker, you know how to do stuff, you would be great, you know, you get along great, you're a people person, like, you know how to interact with people, you're a great communicator, you show up when you know, when you're supposed to show up, you're a hard-ass worker. They see all these great qualities about you, and they said, hey, have you ever thought about starting your own business? And they're like, you know, people keep telling me this, but you know what they do? They're worried because of the money that they have. They have somebody else, you know, they're with somebody that's actually working. You know, they got money saved up somewhere. They have places that they're renting out, so they got money flow coming in. But they're afraid to take that step, that leap, you know, of risking it all, you know. I love the good life. I love going out and buying myself, you know, because some people are materialistic. They love going out and always buying stuff and buying stuff and buying stuff and, you know, all the, you know, they want everything. They want to be able to go out and buy a lot of stuff that they might not even need. And, but they don't see the big picture of what they can actually, the money that could flow into their life later on if they, you know, would really just start their own business. They have what it takes, you know, and I do want to reach out to that person and say, you know what? I started my business living in my car. I was homeless when I had my business in New York. I got a nighttime job, and then eventually I started getting clients in the daytime. It was a perfect plan. I was like, you know, hey, I'll work at this job at night. I get money, so I got gas money. You know, I was living in my car. Nobody knew it. The boss didn't know it. The workers didn't know it. I showed up pretty as, just like right now. Well, my hair would have been pulled up in a ponytail, had my work clothes on, nothing looked wrinkled, showed up on time, worked my ass off, did my time, didn't cause any problems at work. Nobody knew. I didn't smell. Everything was, you know, how did I do that anyway? Everything was caught up. My teeth was brushed. My hair was combed, you know? They didn't know that I was living in my car. You know, and eventually I had to let that company go at nighttime because now I want to work only in the daytime, building up my business. And was it easy? Absolutely not. But I did it. You know, I did it without having any person to help me with that, you know, no backups, you know. So I was able to do that without, and this is what happens to a lot of people. They think I got to be in with somebody so they can help pay the bills. But I did it without having anybody help me out with paying out the bills. What bills? I'm living in my car. I just got to keep the, you know, pay the insurance, pay for the gas, my food, which food pantries, you know. So if I could do it, anyone could do it. But there's people, you know, they get so comfortable about working for another company. Hang on, Starlight's got to get some water today here. But before I say any more, ping. Hello, my name is Starlight. Welcome to my YouTube channel, and you can find me on YouTube, and that is at Starlight, and that is Kathy with a K Dingman. Plus, don't forget you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, plus give me a thumbs up, and you can also leave a message down below, beep, 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 and you can share my videos with your family, your friends. Don't forget to ring the notification bell, and you can check out my playlist. Plus, you can find me on Instagram at 1995 Starlight or on Facebook, and that is Kathy with a K Dingman Starlight. So yeah, people get comfortable at, you know, just working for a company, getting paid what they know they're, you know, they're like, I would like to have more money than what they're paying me. They can have more money. You know, I went from, you know, working at a, I might have been making $10 an hour working for a cleaning company, and that's actually when I started my business. It's what I actually started charging people because Starlight had no clue what she was doing. And because I wanted to know, I didn't want to rip people off. So, so Starlight started like $10 an hour for cleaning, which that's what I was making at, you know, actually when I started for that cleaning business, they started me off at $9 or something like that. And I only worked like a couple of days, and bam, they're like, wow, you're amazing. We're raising you up for another $1. We're giving you $1 already. So Starlight proved herself right away with her job, you know, working for that company. But Starlight was only starting $10 an hour when I started my own cleaning business because I didn't know how long it was going to take to do the house. How am I going to tell them, you know, like how much for an hour? So those people got a really good deal on Starlight for years. And then I had to raise the price up when I kind of moved away from that area. So it ended later on, like, I was getting paid all kinds of different money, you know, like it wasn't really for an hour because it was by the job, but it was, you know, going from $10 an hour, I ended up, you know, bringing the price up as I was going along, you know, and it ended up being like 25, 30, you know, I was getting all different, it's kind of almost like for an hour, but that's how I was figuring it, but that's not what I was getting, how I was working it out. But it was like $50. I'm like, hey, this job is gonna take like 3 hours. I'll tell you what, that was a dirty, nasty job because it was a construction company, you know, wow, I'll tell you, you know, that was a dirty job. So the price did go up to $50 an hour. Isn't that better than $10 an hour working for a company? You know, I get to set my own hours. So there's times that we need to let go of things and take that risk and take that step of faith to go out and say, I got a lot of great things about me. I'm a hard worker. I'm organized. You know, I show up. I don't screw off. I get along. I can do, you know, I can work with people, figure out, you know. So there's times that we got to let go of jobs, you know, working for a company, when every time you go somewhere, there's another new problem, you know. That they don't, you know, like, you know, there's a lot of jobs that I worked for, never got vacation time because they didn't want to give you full time. Well, this way, you know what? You could do whatever you want to do later on. If you want to hire people, then you could go on vacation, but you got to work up to that. It doesn't happen overnight, where you could go and take that time off and save that money and be wise of how to price things. Do your work, your homework, as far as checking out what places would charge, whatever you want to do. So there's people, they don't believe in themselves, so they get stuck in this rut of working for companies. They got so much that they can do so much. I believe in them. I have the faith in them, but they don't have the faith in themselves that they can do that. So they just take these jobs. Now they got to travel, travel an hour away or something like that for a job, and they don't want to travel. It's one thing, traveling in the summertime an hour away, but when winter comes, snow hits, it's no fun driving an hour to get to a place. A lot, not saying that things are going to happen, but you have to be careful. You got to take your time in the wintertime. And like relationships, there's people that are in relationships, they stay stuck because they have kids. We can't. Or their belief system is screwed up, thinking that it's, because I met a man, he divorced his wife, and she says, oh, you're going to burn in hell for that, And now he's feeling guilty about it. He divorced her because he was going through a lot of shit with her, but now he's feeling guilty that, I sinned. I should never have broken up with her. I should have never, that's wrong. Because that was God does not want you to be with someone, that you're miserable with. There's a lot of people, that get in with, with the wrong person. They're abusive. They're not even, they don't even care. God does want us to be wise. And I had to do a study on this a long time ago because I was stuck in a cult church. I was like, oh my, I can't leave him. I was in a cult church getting treated like shit at the, people, the whole church was like on my family, my two kids and myself, because I opened up my mouth being a female at the church. I was like the number one enemy, Starlight walks in, like how long was I there before bam, Let's see, August, September, October, I got so-called married, not even a legal marriage. It took me 2 months, after the honeymoon, bam, start, like what a short honeymoon that was, and before I know it, I'm getting attacked by the whole congregation of the church people with the pastor, So does God want us to be in those kind of situations and be married to people that, are bringing us into those kind of situations and not protecting us from people like that? Absolutely not. I had to study and study. I would not leave that person. I studied. I had notebooks of studying things. I had to go into the old dictionaries to find out, is this wrong? God, I'm like, God, please. I wanted to please God. It was all about pleasing God. I was like, man, I was crying. I was praying that God would protect, get me out of that situation for 7 years of hell in a relationship stuck at this church with my kids. So when do you think is the time to break free? That was a test. And there was notes that I was taking, on my own about all this stuff, because there was a written divorcement I found, and there was no legal, that's how this church ran, is that they didn't want the women to have any freedoms. They wanted to make them feel stuck by not marrying them, because then how can they ever, leave? Because even if the guy was abusive to her or even cheated on her, she had all these kids. How can she leave? Because they weren't legally married, so then she would get some kind of help at the end, So that's what they purposely did, is to keep those women stuck, or those relationships where they felt like they had to. There was no way out. They gave them no way out. There's women out there at that church that had lots of kids. They didn't believe in birth control. They wanted you to have lots of kids because those kids were going to serve the church later on in their life, and build more churches, So that's why, I had to free myself from that situation, and I am so happy I did. I was miserable. It was a horrible experience. So when you're in such a very unhappy relationship, you're trying to do the work and they're not, they're causing more stress in your life than what you can handle every day, because really, would it be wise for you to stay in a relationship like that when they're driving you nuts and they're tormenting you with what they have to say with their tongue, or what they're doing in the house, because there's people that get spirits in them that are not so friendly. So why put yourself at a risk where you can actually have them where they trigger you so much that you end up abusing that person, or even like some people, they end up shooting people or killing people because they were under pressure for so long that they flipped out and they finally did something about it. Well, you think God really wants you to be stuck in a relationship that can cause you to go to that extreme to do something? What if you're in a relationship when they're doing something wicked to the kids? What is it? Because you got legally married, that you got to stay with that person for the rest of your life? So that's when you know that you got to break free, and you can do that. It's all a system that they set up to program you to keep you stuck. God wants us to be here, be happy, not to be abused by people or even our kids, to put our kids in unsafe environments for other people. Oh, well, we can't leave because we got kids. Well, you're not teaching your kids anything, because this is the kind of life that you want them to have later on, is to be miserable the rest of their life with somebody because mommy and daddy stay together. For what? You're not helping the kids out when you're putting them under a lot of stress. They're not going to feel safe. I know what it's like. It's not a great situation to be when the kids are fearing their lives in their own home where they should feel safe. So those are times that you got to let go, and you got to be brave. You got to protect your kids, protect yourself. You don't want to be in that situation where you got so much to offer someone, but then you are stuck in a relationship that is dead and going nowhere, and they are purposely triggering you they want to get you upset. They want to see what's behind you, And those are tests. God will put us we will get in those situations, and it's a test for you to, how much are you willing to put up? Even where you live. I just met a guy, like I said yesterday about the guy that was drinking and driving. He's not happy where he lives. He felt great because somebody treated him good. And he was a different skin color. He wasn't white. But he wasn't used to that. And it made him feel great. But where he lives, he's seeing stuff. He's seeing spirits out there. And I said, well, with that, the kind of people that you're spending time with or where you are, yeah, you're going to see stuff. And he's worried about his kids. And he's having this battle. But staying there is not going to really solve the problem. You can't keep yourself in that environment thinking that you're going to help the problem, but you take a step out. It's the way your belief system is, thinking, I got to do it this way. It's only going to work this way. No, you got to break that system. You got to, let go of that program, that mindset that I have to do it this way. This is how everybody else does it. Well, things are changing. We're in 2026. Those programs are no longer working. Everything's, getting upgraded, You got to upgrade it with changing the way you think and the programs that you're running under. You can't work in the 3D matrix system to free yourself from those situations. That's why you can't keep on believing that, hey, everybody else, this is what everybody else told me to do. That it's going to keep you stuck. you know, you want to help them out, but by being in the same mess where they are is not going to help those people out, those kids out. So, you know, if you're living in a place that you're not happy, it's too busy, too loud, you know, a lot of toxic energies, a lot of things that you know, you don't want to see anymore, you know, the streets and all the stuff that you see out in the city area, you got to break free. But you got to stop listening to people that want to keep you stuck. You're the only one that can free yourself. So I love you so much. And I hope you really get a lot of help from this video. And this is Starlight. Thank you for watching my video. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Plus, give me a thumbs up. And you can leave me a message down below. Beep, beep, beep. Plus, you could share my videos with your family or friends. And don't forget the notification bell. And check out my playlist. And you can also find me on Instagram at 1995 Starlight or on Facebook, and that is Kathy with a K Dingman Starlight. Thank you for watching. This is Starlight. Namaste. This is Starlight. Love, light, and peace.